The wind screamed across the frozen planet, tearing through the ruins of a forgotten city. Snow fell like shards of glass, sharp and endless. In the middle of that white storm, a small alien girl walked, her thin arms clutching two tiny newborns wrapped in torn fabric. Her name was Aria. She was young, barely more than a child herself. Her skin shimmered faintly with blue light under the storm, and her eyes, once bright like stars, were now dull and tired. Each step she took sank deep into the snow, her legs shaking from the cold. She looked around, nothing but broken buildings and ice-covered machines from an old war. The city was dead, and she was the only one left alive. Her people had been abandoned months ago. The Vishari, once proud and peaceful, had lost the war against the Galactic Union. The survivors were promised rescue, but no ships ever came. Now the world had become a grave of silence and snow. Aria stumbled and fell to her knees. The babies whimpered softly, weak and hungry. She pressed them close to her chest, whispering in her native tongue, her voice trembling. "Don't sleep, little lights, stay with me, please." But her breath came out as ice, freezing in the air. Her body ached, her fingers numb, yet she kept walking because stopping meant death. Far above the dying planet, a human cargo ship drifted quietly through space. Its name was the Solace, and inside sat Captain Elias Ford, a man who had seen too many wars and too many worlds die. He was alone, carrying supplies to a mining colony. His radio playing only static, then through the noise, a faint signal broke through. At first it was just a crackling hum, barely a sound, but then came a voice, small and shaking. It didn't speak any human language, but the tone was clear. It was crying, begging. Elias froze. He replayed it again and again, his heart pounding. It wasn't a distress code, not a military message, just a simple, desperate call for help. He checked the coordinates, and his computer flashed a warning. Signal origin, Veshar 9 declared abandoned zone. No life expected. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the data. That planet was supposed to be dead, wiped out years ago, but if the signal was real, someone or something was still alive down there. His hands hovered over the controls. Protocol said to ignore it. The galactic law said any contact with abandoned species was forbidden, but his heart whispered something else. He remembered a face, his daughter, frozen in the red storms of Mars years ago. He had failed her once, he would not fail another child again. Elias turned off the ship's transponder, hiding his position. "Computer, set course for Veshar 9, he said quietly. The AI responded in a cold tone. "Captain, this action is not authorized." "I don't care," he replied. The engines roared to life, and the Solace turned toward the dead world outside. The stars stretched into lines as the ship entered warp, racing toward the unknown. Down below, Aria crawled into a broken building. Searching for shelter, the roof had holes, and the wind screamed through like a ghost. She found an old communication beacon. Half buried in ice, its screen flickered faintly. The last piece of living technology in the ruins. She pressed random buttons, praying it would work. A weak blue light blinked once, then again. She didn't know who would hear it, maybe no one, but she sent her plea anyway. Her voice was cracked and weak, her words simple and full of fear. "Please, help my children. Cold, please." The signal traveled far into the dark sky. Vanishing among the stars, the babies cried softly, their tiny breaths fogging the air. Aria rocked them slowly, singing a lullaby of her people, though her voice trembled. Her tears froze on her cheeks as she whispered, "Sleep, my stars." Just a little longer. Her eyelids grew heavy. Her body shook violently, but the warmth inside her heart was fading. She looked up one last time at the sky, so far, so silent, and thought she saw a light moving across the heavens. Maybe it was a dream, maybe hope in the darkness above. Elias's ship broke through the atmosphere, flames lighting up the frozen night. The storm howled. The scanners struggled to read the ground. He whispered, "Hang on." "Whoever you are." He didn't know that below him. In the ruins, a small alien girl was taking her last breath. Her babies held close, the beacon's light flickering out. And then silence for a moment. It seemed too late. The ship's sensors caught nothing, no movement. No heat, no life. Elias stared at the screen, his jaw tightening. "Come on," he whispered. "There has to be someone." The storm thickened, snow hammering the hull like fists. The radio cracked with static, then went quiet again. He sat in the dark cockpit, gripping the controls, refusing to turn away. Finally, he said softly, "If there's even one breath left, I'll find you. Outside, lightning flashed across the ice plains. The world was dying, but somewhere under the snow, life was still fighting to live, and in that frozen silence, humanity had already made its choice. The ship broke through the clouds like a falling star, fire and ice clashing in the black sky. Elias gripped the control panel as the solace shook violently, alarms flashing red. The storm outside was stronger than anything he had ever faced. Lightning tore across the horizon, painting the world in blue flashes, revealing only ruins and snow. He tried to scan for life, but the screens showed nothing. Come on, give me something, he muttered under his breath. The AI voice crackled. Captain Ford, atmospheric interference at 98%. No life signs detected. He hit the console in frustration. There's someone down there, I heard her voice. He didn't care what the system said. He had to believe. The Solace landed roughly on a frozen plateau, metal screeching as the landing gear touched the cracked ground. The ship groaned under the pressure of the storm. Elias pulled on his heavy survival suit, the kind made for zero visibility and deadly cold. When the door opened, the wind hit him like a hammer. Slicing through the armor, snow blasted against his visor, and his footsteps vanished as soon as he made them. He held a portable scanner in one hand, its light flickering weakly. The world around him was nothing but white emptiness, broken towers and bones of an ancient city. Every few steps the wind would roar so loudly it sounded like voices, ghosts whispering from the past. He ignored the fear clawing at his chest and pushed on. Then he saw something, a flicker of movement on his scanner. Faint. Almost gone. He stopped, heart pounding. 3 heat signatures, the AI confirmed. Weak and fading. Elias's eyes widened. They're alive, he said. He began to run, slipping over ice and rubble, following the signal deeper into the ruins. He found a collapsed structure half buried under snow. The beacon light blinked faintly inside, struggling to stay alive just like the ones it called for help. Elias dug through the snow with his gloved hands, each scoop freezing his fingers even through the suit. Minutes felt like hours, but he didn't stop. Finally, he saw her, small, blue-skinned, motionless, clutching 2 tiny shapes in her arms, a child. He whispered. He dropped to his knees. Brushing the frost from her face, her eyes were closed. Her breathing so slow he thought she was gone. He gently pulled the newborns from her grasp. One was completely still, the other weakly whimpering. No, 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 he muttered, his voice breaking. He pressed a heater pad against their bodies. Trying to share warmth, he lifted all 3 in his arms, stumbling back toward the ship as the wind screamed around him. Inside the Solace, the air was warm and dim. Filled with the sound of engines humming, Elias placed them in the medical bay and started the biopod. The machine scanned them, lights flickering, then displayed a warning. Unknown species detected. Treatment incompatible. Elias's heart sank. He shouted, Override it. I don't care about species. The AI responded, Captain Ford, interference with alien DNA can cause system failure. I said override it, he roared. He slammed his hand against the console, sparks flying. He didn't care about the law or the machine, only the tiny breaths fading in front of him. He tore open a first aid kit and started manually applying heat patches. Using human med gel on their skin, he didn't know if it would work, but doing nothing wasn't an option. The living newborn began to cry softly, weak, but alive. Elias smiled through tears. That's it, little one. Keep fighting. He turned to the still one, pale and silent. He pressed 2 fingers gently against its chest. No heartbeat. He remembered Mars. He remembered holding his own daughter in the same way. Cold, lifeless, gone. The same pain tore through him again. No, not again, he whispered, voice shaking. He began chest compressions, breathing into the small alien's lungs. Counting with trembling hands, the medical system beeped angrily, detecting damage to its circuits, but Elias didn't stop. Come back, he said. Come on. Breathe. For a long moment there was nothing, only the sound of wind howling against the ship. Then a sound, a soft gasp. The newborn's chest moved. A tiny flicker of life returning. Elias froze, watching in disbelief as the baby's eyes opened. Glowing faintly in the dim light, he let out a broken laugh. There you are, he whispered. You're not done yet. Arya stirred weakly on the bed beside them. Her eyelids fluttered open, and she saw the human bending over her children. Panic flashed in her eyes. She tried to sit up. whispering something in her alien tongue, her voice full of fear. Elias raised his hand slowly, showing he meant no harm. Easy, easy. You're safe now, he said softly, though she couldn't understand his words. But she saw his face, tired, kind, covered in frost and worry. And her fear began to fade. He gave her a blanket, wrapping it gently around her shoulders. She touched it with trembling fingers. Eyes wide, he pointed at himself, saying, Elias. She repeated it slowly. Yes? Her voice quiet, unsure. He smiled. It was the first human smile she had ever seen, and in that moment, it was the warmest thing in the universe. Outside, the storm still howled, tearing across the dead planet. But inside the solace, warmth had returned. A human and an alien, once enemies by law, now bound by something far greater, hope. As Elias watched the three of them sleep under the soft glow of the heater, he whispered, I don't know who you are, but I swear I'll keep you safe and far away. In the dark of space, the galactic law had no idea that its greatest rule had just been broken. The storm outside had calmed, but inside the solace, another storm was still raging. Elias sat beside the medical bed, eyes heavy but heart wide awake. The alien girl, Aria, and her two newborns lay wrapped in thin blankets, their breathing soft and uneven. He watched the monitor screens flicker with strange symbols. Their biology was something no human machine understood. He had done everything he could, but he still wasn't sure if they would make it through the night. The medical AI had stopped arguing hours ago. It simply scanned them silently. Confused by the patterns of their blood and heartbeat, Elias leaned forward, wiping the sweat and frost from his brow, whispering to himself, Come on, little ones. You've made it this far. Aria stirred in her sleep, her hand twitching as if reaching for her children. Elias gently covered her hand with his own glove. He could feel the faint pulse through her icy skin. That single heartbeat meant hope. He smiled sadly. You're tougher than you look, he said softly. He stood up and began to walk toward the ship's kitchen module. His legs felt heavy, his mind replaying what had happened. That signal, the soft voice crying through the static, had led him here. He poured a cup of rehydrated coffee, staring out through the frost-covered window. Beyond it was only darkness. Stars hidden behind endless clouds, he whispered to himself. You did the right thing, Ford. I hope. Behind him, a soft sound broke the silence, a weak cry. He turned instantly, the cup falling from his hand. The smaller newborn was moving, kicking under the blanket. Elias rushed back, his heart pounding. The baby's tiny hands glowed faintly blue. Like starlight, the glow spread across its skin. Warm and alive, the second baby stirred next. Opening its eyes, silver and wide, Elias knelt beside them, smiling like a man who had just witnessed a miracle. You're alive, he whispered, voice breaking. The ship's AI spoke in a calm tone. Vital signs stabilized. Captain Ford, although irregular, recommend continued observation. He laughed softly. Observation, huh? I'll take that as good news. Aria woke next, blinking slowly, her gaze darting across the strange room. Her breathing quickened, panic flashing through her body. She didn't understand where she was or who the human beside her was. Elias raised his hands again, just like before. It's all right, he said gently. You're safe now. She didn't understand the words, but the tone reached her heart. Her body relaxed, her eyes softening as she looked down at her children. They were alive, moving, breathing. She made a sound, half sob, half laugh, and tears slid down her cheeks, freezing halfway. Elias stood there. Not sure what to do, he wanted to say something comforting, but words felt too small, so he just nodded, letting silence speak for him. He handed her a warm pack of liquid nutrients, showing her how to sip it. She hesitated, sniffed it, then drank slowly. Her eyes widened in surprise at the warmth spreading through her chest. She looked up and gave him a small, shy nod. It was the closest thing to thank you her language could give. Hours passed in quiet rhythm. The storm outside faded into a whisper. Elias ran a diagnostic on the ship, checking fuel and systems. He had burned too much energy landing through the storm. He couldn't stay here for long, but where could he go? Galactic law forbade him from taking aliens aboard for transport. If he returned to human space, the patrols would scan his ship and arrest him immediately. He glanced at the sleeping family, his mind heavy. He knew what the law said, but his heart had already chosen. He sat back down beside them, exhaustion finally catching up. He thought of his daughter again, Leah, small and bright with hair like gold. He had lost her to a storm 2 years ago on Mars. The memory hit him like cold water. He remembered holding her small hand, whispering for her to wake up, but she never did. He had never forgiven himself now, seeing these two small alien lives breathing beside him. It felt like a second chance from the universe. Maybe he couldn't save Leah, but he could save them. Arya opened her eyes again, watching him quietly. She didn't know his story, but she could see the sorrow behind his tired smile. Her species had a way of sensing emotion, not through words, but through energy. She felt his guilt, his loneliness, and something deeper, kindness. She reached out a trembling hand and touched his sleeve. For a second, Elias froze, surprised by the gesture. Then he smiled. In that touch, two worlds that had never met before finally understood each other. The AI interrupted softly. "Captain Ford, new signal detected, long-range transmission. Galactic patrol frequency." Elias's eyes snapped to the radar. A red light blinked, getting closer every second. He cursed under his breath. They must have tracked the distress signal. He looked at Arya and her children, still too weak to move. He had a choice: leave them and escape, or stay and risk everything. He turned to the AI, voice firm and steady. "Prepare for silent mode," he said, warning. The AI replied, "Activating silent mode will disable all communication and navigation assistance." "I know," Elias said. "Do it." The lights dimmed, the engines fell quiet, and the solace vanished into the storm's shadow once again. Arya looked around, confused by the sudden darkness. Elias placed a finger on his lips, signaling silence. Outside, the Galactic patrol ship passed overhead, beams of blue light sweeping across the ruins. They came within meters of the solace but didn't see it. Just another frozen rock in the storm. Elias held his breath, heart pounding. Only when the light disappeared did he finally exhale. He looked at Arya and whispered, "They'll come back." His voice was calm, but his eyes held determination. "I won't let them find you." And as the storm howled once more across the dead planet, one human ship remained hidden in its heart, protecting the fragile spark of life that might one day change the stars. The storm had ended, but the silence that followed was heavier than the wind. Inside the solace, the lights glowed dimly, reflecting off the frost on the metal walls. Elias stood near the cockpit, staring at the radar, his jaw tight. The red blip that had appeared hours ago, the Galactic patrol ship, was gone for now. But he knew they would return. They always did. Behind him, the sound of soft breathing filled the air. Arya and her newborns were sleeping again, wrapped in thermal blankets, their glowing skin pulsing gently with life. Elias turned and watched them for a long moment. He felt a strange peace looking at them, but it was mixed with fear. He had broken every rule of the Galactic Code by saving them, and now, the weight of that choice pressed on him like gravity. He finally sat down at the control desk and opened a secret communication link. His hands hesitated before typing the message. "Emergency medical request. Unidentified alien survivors found on Vesher 9. Need assistance." He sent it to the Galactic Council's aid network, the same system that handled rescue missions. It was a risk, but he couldn't save them alone. Minutes passed, then the reply came. Cold and official. Transmission received. Request denied. Interference with abandoned species violates galactic law. Article 17, Section 3. Abandoned planets are under non-contact regulation. Terminate any assistance and leave the system immediately. Elias read the message twice, his chest tightening with anger. He slammed his hand on the console. The screen flickering, he muttered, "Abandoned species. They're talking about her like she's trash." He looked at Arya again, so small, so fragile, yet alive. His voice broke. "She's not a regulation. She's someone's child." The AI voice came softly from behind. "Captain Ford, the Council's orders are clear. Failure to comply will result in license removal, imprisonment, and exile from human colonies." Elias stared at the blinking cursor on the screen. He spoke quietly. "You ever lose someone, Unit 7? The AI paused, processing. "I am not capable of loss." "Captain?" Elias nodded slowly, his eyes hard. "That's why you don't understand." He began deleting the communication logs, wiping every trace of the signal. The AI protested. "Captain Ford, erasing Council communication is a federal offense." Elias replied firmly. "Then let them come find me." He hit the final key, and the system went dark. He leaned back, breathing heavily. For the first time in years, he felt truly alive, even if it meant becoming an outlaw. He turned to look at the sleeping girl again. Arya stirred, her eyes fluttering open, catching the light. When she saw him, she smiled faintly, weak but grateful. She spoke in her language, the words soft and musical. Elias didn't understand, but her tone said enough. It was thanks. It was trust, he smiled back and said quietly. You don't need to thank me, kid. You just need to live. She tilted her head, repeating softly. Live. Her voice uncertain. But learning. Elias laughed gently. Yeah, that's the word. Hours later, he sat near the engine core, repairing damaged circuits. The power cells were nearly drained from the storm. If he didn't find fuel soon, the heaters would shut down, and everyone on board would freeze. He opened the cargo bay and looked out at the horizon, frozen, endless in the distance. The Galactic Patrol's beacon blinked faintly in the clouds. He had little time. He went back inside and pulled a thin blanket over Arya and her children. Their glowing skin shimmered like small stars in the dark room. He whispered, You don't know it yet, but you've just made me the most wanted man in 3 systems. He smiled sadly. Worth it? Suddenly, the AI's voice broke the quiet. Captain Ford, an encrypted message has arrived on a private channel. Elias frowned. From who? The AI hesitated. Unknown origin. Message reads, You are being watched, Captain. Hand them over before it's too late. Elias froze, his heart pounded. How did they find me this fast? He muttered. He ran to the cockpit, checking the ship's external sensors. A signal beacon was blinking under the hull, tiny, magnetic, probably attached during landing. He cursed, grabbing a tool and rushing outside. The wind was biting cold as he crawled under the ship. He tore the small metal device from the frame, its red light pulsing like a heartbeat. He crushed it in his gloved hand, sparks flying. Then he threw it into the snow, watching it vanish in the storm. When he returned inside, Arya was awake, holding her children close. Her eyes followed him carefully, sensing his tension. He knelt beside her and spoke softly. They're coming. The bad ones. She didn't understand the words, but his tone made her shiver. She whispered something in her language, a soft prayer. Elias nodded, pretending to understand. Yeah, me too. He returned to the pilot's chair. Flipping switches, engines roared weakly to life, lights flickering across the dashboard. He had no plan, no destination, just one promise. He looked back at her and said, Hold on tight. The ship lifted slowly off the ground, snow exploding outward in a white storm as it rose into the dark sky. The radar flashed again. 2 patrol ships entering orbit, searching. Elias clenched his teeth. He knew what the council would say if they caught him. Traitor, lawbreaker, human gone rogue. But in his heart he knew the truth. He wasn't breaking the law of humanity, he was living it because sometimes saving a life was worth more than all the laws in the galaxy. The Solace climbed higher, its engines glowing bright against the frozen clouds, and as the stars appeared once more, Elias whispered under his breath, Let's see how far you can chase me. Law of the stars. Inside the ship, Arya held her newborns close, feeling warmth for the first time in her short life, and though she didn't know the words for it yet, she could feel it deep inside her heart, that this strange human had become something her world had forgotten long ago. Hope. The Solace tore through the frozen clouds, its engines roaring like thunder across the silent sky. Captain Elias Ford sat in the pilot's chair, his eyes locked on the radar screen glowing red in the dim cockpit. 2 bright dots blinked behind him, Galactic patrol ships moving fast, closing in. They had found him. Arya sat in the back, clutching her newborns close, the ship shaking, making her whisper soft prayers in her alien tongue. She didn't know what was happening, but she could feel the fear in Elias's every movement. His hands flew across the controls, flipping switches, rerouting power. The ship's AI spoke in a calm but urgent tone. Warning, fuel levels at 22%. Shields unstable, probability of survival, 12%. Elias gritted his teeth. I'll take 12 over 0. Outside, the storm had returned. The same deadly blizzard that had nearly buried Arya before. Snow and ice whipped across the landscape as the ship dived low. Elias used the terrain to hide, flying between sharp cliffs of frozen stone and ice. Blaster fire streaked past the windows, blue lights cutting through the fog. Each shot missed by inches. Shaking the hull, the radio crackled, a voice coming through, cold and official. "This is Commander Stren of the Galactic Patrol. Unidentified human vessel. You are in violation of Article 17. Power down and surrender immediately." Elias didn't respond, his eyes fixed on the horizon. "If you do not comply, we will disable your ship and board by force," he smirked bitterly. "You'll have to catch me first." He slammed the throttle forward and the Solace shot ahead. Engines screaming as it weaved through icy canyons, the patrol ships followed, their lights glowing through the storm like hunting eyes. Elias switched off the external lights. Plunging his ship into near darkness, he flew by instinct, trusting his memory and the faint scanner readings. Every second felt like a heartbeat between life and death. Arya's voice broke through the hum of engines, soft and frightened. "Lee," as she said, her accent trembling but clear. He turned slightly, giving her a small nod. "It's okay. I've got you." She didn't understand all the words, but she saw his eyes. Calm, focused, strong. That was enough. Then a blast hit. The ship lurched violently to one side. Alarm screaming, the babies began to cry, the sound mixing with the metal groan of the ship. "Damage to left engine," the AI announced. "Coolant system failing." Elias slammed his hand against the console. "Hold together, old girl." The smell of burnt wires filled the air, and sparks rained from the ceiling. He pulled a lever, ejecting the damaged engine core. The core shot out of the ship and exploded in the air, a bright flash lighting up the storm. The patrol ship slowed for a moment. Confused by the sudden flare, Elias took his chance. Turning sharply toward a narrow valley, the Solace dove beneath a frozen bridge of ice, engines sputtering but alive. The radar showed the patrol ship splitting up, one moving above, one circling behind. He didn't have long, he whispered. "AI. Initiate cold cloak protocol," the voice replied. "That system is untested. Captain?" "Then it's about time we test it," he said. He flipped the final switch and the ship's heat signature began to fade. The engines powered down to near silence. The lights dimmed to nothing. The Solace became a ghost in the snow, sinking beneath the white storm. They drifted slowly until the ship touched the frozen surface of a wide, icy lake. Elias shut down all systems completely. The hull creaked as it settled under the ice. Above, the patrol ship scanned the area, blue searchlights sweeping across the clouds. A voice echoed through the radio again. "We know you're down there, Captain Ford. Turn yourself in, and we may spare your life." Elias stared at the radio but didn't move. He whispered, "You'll never touch them." Inside, the only sound was the faint hum of the emergency heater. Arya looked around, her eyes wide in the darkness. Elias handed her a glow stick, its soft light reflecting on her blue skin. She reached out and touched his hand. Her touch was warm, full of silent gratitude. She didn't know the danger he faced, exile, prison, maybe death, but she knew he was fighting for her and her children. Hours passed. The storm outside calmed, and the searchlights moved away. Elias stayed awake the whole time, watching the radar, breathing slowly. When the signals finally disappeared, he closed his eyes and exhaled. He whispered, "We made it. For now." Arya tilted her head, repeating softly, "Made it." He smiled. "That's right. Made it." For a moment, everything felt peaceful again. The ice above them glowed faintly from the light of the twin moons, turning the cabin blue and silver. Elias looked at the sleeping children, their small chests rising and falling, and whispered, "You've got more courage than half the galaxy." Then the AI spoke again. "Captain Ford, power reserves are at 5%. Remaining time before system shutdown, 1 hour." Elias sighed deeply. Running a hand through his hair, the chase had saved them. But now they were trapped. If the heaters failed, they would freeze before morning. He leaned back in his chair, staring through the ice ceiling at the faint stars above. "Guess we'll have to find another miracle," he said quietly. He closed his eyes for a second, letting exhaustion pull at him. Beside him, Arya hummed a soft lullaby, the same one she had sung in the ruins before he found her. Her voice was gentle, full of hope and sadness even without words. He understood. She was thanking him again. Elias smiled faintly and whispered back, "Don't thank me yet. The hard part's just beginning." And outside, in the endless cold of Vesher 9, the faint sound of engines whispered again. The Galactic Patrol hadn't given up the hunt. The Solace drifted in silence beneath the frozen lake. Its engines were dead, its power nearly gone. The only light came from the soft glow of Arya's children, their tiny bodies shining like small stars in the dark. Elias sat near the control console, his hands clasped together. Eyes heavy with exhaustion, he had survived the storm. Escaped the patrol, but now, he was trapped in ice with 3 fragile lives depending on him. The AI spoke quietly, its voice weaker now as systems shut down one by one. Captain Ford, power at 3%. Recommend evacuation or hibernation. Elias shook his head. Evacuate where? There's nowhere to go. He looked at Arya, sitting beside her children, whispering softly to keep them calm. Even in fear, she stayed strong. He smiled faintly. You're braver than most soldiers I've ever met. He opened a small panel beside the chair and pulled out a backup communicator. It was an old device, one he had kept hidden since his days in the frontier fleet. He hesitated for a moment, then began to type. If you're receiving this, Marin, I need your help. He pressed send. The signal flickered weakly through the frozen air. If anyone could help, it was Dr. Marin Vale, his old friend, a human scientist who worked beyond the Council's laws. She had left the system years ago after clashing with the Galactic Ethics Board. If she was still alive, she was his only chance. Arya crawled closer, pointing at the blinking communicator. Her eyes asked a question her words couldn't. Elias nodded softly. I'm calling a friend, someone who can help you. She tilted her head, then gently touched her chest. Arya. He smiled. Yeah, I know. Arya. Then he pointed at himself. Elias, she repeated. Yes, with a small smile for the first time in days. It felt like hope had returned. Hours passed. The temperature dropped, frost crawling up the walls. Elias was beginning to lose feeling in his fingers when suddenly the communicator beeped. A voice came through, old but clear. Elias Ford, you're supposed to be dead. Elias laughed weakly. Nice to hear your voice too, Marin. Where the hell are you? He replied. Veshar 9 under an ice shelf. I've got survivors. I'm not human. A long silence followed. Then her voice returned, sharp with disbelief. Veshari? That species was wiped out a decade ago. Elias looked at Arya and her children. Not all of them. He explained everything, the distress signal, the rescue, the patrol, the law he had broken. Marin sighed. You always did have a habit of saving the wrong people at the wrong time. Elias smiled tiredly. And you always helped me anyway. Send me your coordinates. I'll do what I can. The transmission cut off. Elias leaned back and closed his eyes, whispering, Hang on, Marin. Please make it. 2 hours later, a faint vibration ran through the ice. Arya looked up, startled, her eyes wide. The babies began to glow brighter, as if sensing something. Then, above the frozen lake, a shadow appeared on a ship, sleek and dark. Descending through the storm, Elias grinned. That's her. A beam of heat melted the ice around the Solace. Freeing it from the frozen prison, Elias restarted the engines just enough to rise. The hatch of the other ship opened, and a woman in a thick suit waved him in. Her voice crackled over the comm. Still breaking the law for strangers, I see. Elias laughed. You wouldn't expect anything less inside Marin's ship. The air was warmer, filled with a faint hum of machines. Marin pulled off her helmet, revealing gray hair tied back and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She looked at Arya and froze. My God, she whispered. You actually found one. Arya held her children tighter, frightened by the stranger's gaze. Marin softened her tone. It's okay, little one. You're safe here. Elias nodded. She doesn't understand your words, but she'll feel your meaning. Marin began scanning them with a handheld device, her brow furrowed deeper with every reading. These infants, their biology is changing, she said quietly. Elias frowned. Changing how? Marin turned the screen toward him. The readings were impossible. Their cells are adapting to extreme cold, naturally without genetic engineering. Elias blinked. You mean they're evolving? Yes, Marin said. They're becoming something new. Something that could survive where nothing else can. She looked at him seriously. Do you know what this means, Elias? If the Council learns about them, they'll take them. Study them. Use them. He clenched his fists. Over my dead body. Marin sighed. That might be exactly what it takes. They stood in silence. The hum of the ship surrounding them, Arya watched. Sensing tension but not the words, she held one child close, the other resting in Elias's arms. He looked down at the small creature. glowing softly, breathing peacefully. He whispered, "You're special, aren't you? You're going to change everything." Marin walked to the control panel, typing quickly. "I can hide you," she said. "There's an old research outpost on Dion's moon. No patrols. No scanners, no laws." Elias nodded slowly. "And after that?" Marin met his eyes. "After that, you disappear. For good," he exhaled, half relief, half fear. "Guess that's the price," she smiled sadly. "It always was." Elias turned to Arya. He pointed at her. Then at the stars outside, he said softly, "We're going to a new home." She didn't understand, but she smiled anyway, her eyes shining. Her children cooed softly, their light reflecting off the cold metal walls, as the two ships flew together into the black sky. Leaving the dead planet behind, Elias looked back one last time. The frozen world that had almost killed them now lay silent beneath the clouds. He whispered, "Goodbye, Veshar 9. Then, looking forward, his voice turned firm. "Next stop, hope." And somewhere deep inside the quiet universe, a human and an alien carried the last spark of a forgotten species. And maybe, just maybe, the first spark of something greater. Months passed and the stars changed above them. The Solace no longer wandered through frozen storms or hid from patrol ships. Now it rested quietly in the sky above a small moon covered in silver clouds and golden grass. The humans called it Dion's Haven. But for Elias and Arya it had no name, it was simply home. The small outpost that Dr. Marin had helped them build stood between the mountains. Surrounded by tall glowing trees at night, the air shimmered with colors, like soft ribbons of light dancing through the mist. Elias had learned to grow food in soil that wasn't meant for humans. Arya had learned to speak in short human words, her accent soft and musical. And her newborns, no longer weak and fragile, ran and laughed under the alien sun. Their eyes glowed like stars, their voices echoing through the valley. For the first time since Veshar 9, there was peace. Elias sat outside the small metal cabin one morning, drinking from a tin mug and watching the sunrise. The twin suns of the system rose together, spilling gold light across the grass. He smiled quietly, whispering, "Warm dawn. Haven't seen one like this in years," behind him. Arya stepped out, her hair catching the light like crystal threads. She carried one of her children on her hip, the other chasing a small robotic drone Marin had built as a toy. When she saw Elias smiling, she tilted her head. "Good. Morning," she said carefully. He nodded, grinning. "Perfect." Her eyes brightened, proud of getting it right. They sat together in silence, the kind that didn't need words. The children played near the fence, laughing as they tried to catch sunlight in their hands. Their laughter was a sound Elias had never thought he'd hear again, a sound that healed something deep inside him. Later that day, Dr. Marin's ship appeared on the horizon, its small engines humming softly. Elias waved as she landed nearby. She stepped out, holding a data pad full of readings, her expression somewhere between awe and disbelief. "You won't believe this," she said. "Their DNA is stable now, perfectly adapted to both extreme cold and heat. They could survive anywhere." Arya watched curiously. Understanding only part of it, Marin smiled at her, then knelt down to the children. "You little ones are proof that life always finds a way," she whispered. The smaller child reached out and touched her hair, laughing softly. Marin chuckled. "You're just like your mother." Elias crossed his arms, looking out at the bright horizon. "So what happens now?" he asked. Marin sighed. "Now, you stay hidden. The council's still searching. But they think you died when your ship's beacon went silent." Elias nodded. Good. He had no regrets. He had left behind his old life, the uniform, the duty, the law, and found something far more human. That night, as the suns disappeared and the moons rose, the valley glowed under pale silver light. Arya sat by the small campfire, singing softly in her native language. The children sat beside her, their heads resting against her shoulders. Elias sat nearby, fixing a broken tool, pretending not to listen, but he did, every word, every note. Her voice was soft and full of memories of a world that no longer existed. And though he couldn't understand her words, he felt the meaning. Love, loss, hope, and gratitude. When she finished, she looked at him and said something in broken English. "For you," she whispered. Pointing to his chest, Elias blinked, surprised. "That song? For me?" She nodded, smiling. "For the man who—" "Bring light." He laughed softly, his eyes warm. You give me too much credit, Arya. She shook her head, her tone gentle but firm. Human heart. Very strong, she said slowly, touching her chest and then his. Warm. When all else cold, he didn't answer. But his eyes said everything. A wind passed through the valley, carrying sparks from the fire into the dark sky above them. The stars shimmered, billions of them, distant, endless. Elias looked up and whispered, You know, back on Earth, we used to believe every star was a story waiting to be told. Arya looked up too, her children following her gaze. Then, we're story? She asked. Elias smiled. Yes, we are. The next morning, Maren prepared to leave, her ship ready to return to deep space. Before she left, she handed Elias a small chip. This contains everything, the data. The coordinates, your story, she said. If something happens to me, promise me you'll keep it safe. Elias took it, frowning. You're not telling the council. Are you? Maren smiled sadly. No, but one day, maybe humanity needs to remember what it means to care. Even when it's forbidden. He nodded slowly. They will. As her ship lifted off, Arya and the children waved, the wind from the engines tossing their hair and laughter into the air. Elias watched the ship disappear into the clouds, then looked back at his small family.
Arya was helping the children gather glowing stones from the riverbank. She turned and smiled at him. In that simple moment, surrounded by life and light, Elias realized something. He hadn't just saved them. They had saved him. Years would pass, and legends would spread across space. Some would whisper about a human who broke the law to save a dying alien child. Others would speak of a forgotten moon where new life began. But only those who truly understood would say the truth, that in a cold, endless universe, one man proved that warmth could still exist. And as the suns rose again over Dion's haven, painting the world in gold, Elias stood beside Arya, holding one of her children's hands. He whispered softly, You see that, little one? That's what hope looks like. Arya smiled, repeating the word she had learned long ago, hope. And somewhere beyond the stars, where laws could not reach and fear could not freeze, a human heart burned bright enough to warm an entire world.